we're all ready to discuss today's topic, which is mindfulness, meditation, yoga, and other strategies that fall under the mindfulness umbrella to anchor us during the extreme and acute times of pain, grief, and suffering after divorce. And that can be intense and painful time. And for some people, it can go longer or maybe be shorter. But generally, we're talking about probably leading up to the divorce, the actual separation, and then the months after that. As if we look across the board, generally, that's your most challenging, intense time. And so today we wanted to talk about how we use those tools to get us through. It will be a different type of story because you were already practicing those things before you went through your separation, and I discovered them afterwards. So let's talk first about the level of pain. I think the level of pain is probably important to acknowledge. So how would you rate that pain you went through? Was it the worst pain you've been through, or can you liken it to another time in your life where it was the worst pain you've been through?
That's a great question. The first memory that I had in the divorce that got me thinking about this topic for this week, because it's such an important one, both for me, but for everybody else out there that's going through these things.
Yeah.
The first thing that comes to my mind is the moment that I first realized my marriage was in trouble. So this was a year before the divorce, and every divorce is different, but this is just my story.
Yes.
And so I remember, really feeling like, what do I do now? I realized that the things that are going to lead to my divorce have happened, whether it's infidelity or whatever, the trust that was broken, and I'm shattered inside. And what am I going to do? And the question of, is this the worst pain I've ever felt? It's the worst pain that I can remember right now. That's for sure. I can't think of a worst pain. It's the equivalent of a loved one dying. It's the equivalent of any other trauma that someone might go through. And we've all had different traumas and different severities of trauma. But at that point in my life, and even since then, it's the closest to anything that I would consider suicidal thoughts. I can understand how somebody gets there. I can understand how they feel hopeless and lost and confused, and everything that they believed is now not the case. And I just remember one day waking up and saying, it's a Saturday, it's a beautiful day outside, and I'm home. My then wife was there, my kids were there, and I said, you know what, guys, I need a day to myself. I can't be here today. And I got in my car and literally I drove to the beach. It's about an hour away. And I just went from lake to lake. I ended up at an ocean at one point, and I just sat with it all day. And I had some moments where Mother Nature spoke to me, whether I felt that in the breeze that went by, or birds that were flying by, or the ripples of the water, or the heartbeat of the ocean. And I fell in love with nature. And at times during that day, I felt okay, but that pain quickly came back. And so it wasn't like, just spend a day at the ocean and you're good. It doesn't work that way. At least it didn't for me in that case. And so it was the beginnings of several days and several weeks like that. Yeah. But to answer your question, I can't think of a tougher time in my life, for sure.
Yeah. Is it fair to say you were blindsided by that pain you were in?
So, yes, I was blindsided. I guess in hindsight now, my intuition, if I was listening to my intuition, it would have told me that something's wrong way sooner than when I found out. But I woke up early one morning and found out some things that I wasn't hoping to find out. And I'll never forget the pit in my stomach, as you receive some news like that. And you can't believe it at first. And so, processing all of that. And I find healing in nature. I find healing from, water, wind, bird. I love trees. It's weird. I know, it's my thing. There's something stoic about a tree that's been there for hundreds of years, that, you can imagine how big it is above us, but how much bigger it is below our feet.
Yeah.
And I just appreciate that kind of stuff. So I always have, but especially in a time of a trauma where all of your senses are heightened, you're looking for a sign, you're looking for something that says it's going to be okay, and you can get through this, and you've been through tougher shit, and you're going to figure this out too. And I had moments like that, and I definitely remember feeling like, all right, I can do this. And then the mind starts to wander again, and the mind starts to say, well, maybe this marriage isn't going to work out. Maybe your kids aren't going to be as good as you hope they're going to be. Maybe you're not going to get past these suicidal thoughts. Maybe, but you just keep going. And yeah, I remember that day like it was yesterday. It was a tough one, for sure.
So that's the realization stage. And then so that day, it sounds as though that day something clicked where you realized nature was making you feel better. Those quiet moments when there were thoughts of okay, and then throughout, then so that's the first stage of knowing, okay, this is over. And then the turmoil of, we talked last week about looking around and realizing that you're now the sole parent, the full-time custodian of these girls. And there's times in those months where I know for me it was up and down. So you'd have a half a day where you felt okay, and then the next half of the day you didn't know how you were going to make it through the next day. So you talked about suicidal thoughts, and you said you understand how people can get to that point. Absolutely. You don't want to be around anymore in that pain. So I've had other people say similar to me, and I always sort of say, well, it's not that you don't want to live anymore, it's that you don't want to live with that pain anymore. And that's the difference. You've got to really sort of clarify that for yourself. It's like, here's this pain, I can't deal with it, and tomorrow I know I have to wake up and deal with it again, and I just don't have the strength. And that's where we start to break down, right? So that's where the breakdown comes in. And this is where mindfulness, meditation, and whatever comes under that umbrella for you. So for me, journaling saved my ass. Like, I can't put it any other way. It was like, here I am in this emotional chaos. I don't think I can get through. And now I've found some strategies that actually, it's like taking pain relief. I used to be like in absolute turmoil, feel like I was losing my mind, and then I would journal, and then it wasn't all better, but I just felt like, okay, I can take a breath and I can face tomorrow morning. At least let's just face tomorrow morning. So for me, my biggest, most powerful strategy was journaling. But what was it for you? So journaling comes under mindfulness, because mindfulness is just being self-aware, aware of our patterns, aware of what we're doing, aware of our coping mechanisms that we're reaching for. It's awareness. So nature was one of your catalysts for that. So what other things were you doing in those months, in those times? So talk me through a time where you would have a moment. Did you have moments where it was like, fuck, how am I going to get through tomorrow? And then what did you do to help yourself?
So yes, to answer your question, yes, it's an up and down. It's a seesaw. One moment I felt good. One moment I felt like I'm at peace. I can live with this. I can deal with this. And 10 minutes later, something happens and it triggers another thought, and you're like, fuck, here we go again. Like, I gotta be able to get past this. I have to be able to process this. I have to be able to move on. So for me, I don't think I'm being too dramatic in saying that meditation saved my life. Like, the ability for me to stop whatever it is I'm doing, set a boundary with my ex-wife, my kids, family members, electronics, social media, all that stuff, shut it off for 10 minutes and disconnect, and allow my brain the freedom to say, no, we're not bringing in new information. We're not having notifications ding us in the background. We're not allowing kids to knock on our door. This is our moment. This is your moment, brain. And you can do whatever you want. You have the freedom. And I remember when I first started meditating, and I could probably get there now, is I would This is going to sound weird to people that don't meditate. You may understand this. I literally would talk to my brain, and I would say to him, it's a guy.
Yeah.
I would say to him, do whatever you want to think about, whatever you want to not think about. It's up to you. Do whatever you want. I'm not going to control you. And I would literally feel whatever it is, like healing or thinking or not thinking and resting, like whatever it is, I could feel things moving in my, not maybe not physically moving, but like there was some healing that was happening like in real time. And it was so powerful. I was like, all right, this is going to work. This is something that I can control. This is something that I can do at any moment. I could be riding in a car. I might not close my eyes if I'm driving, but it's as simple as saying I'm inhaling and I'm exhaling, and I'm recognizing my breath and bringing it back to that.
Yeah.
In the beginning, it was guided meditations. It was, positive affirmations type meditations to start the day, to end the day. Different guided meditations for anxiety, for balance, for peace, whatever it is. I mean, there's so much, whether it's Spotify or YouTube Music or, YouTube regular for videos. There's so many resources out there. And for me, it started with a simple, I can't remember if it was like Headspace or one of these free apps. And it began at the end of my yoga sessions as a 10-minute meditation. I didn't even realize I was doing meditations. And then I would wake up, I would finish the session, and I would say, wow, like I feel refreshed right now. I feel like there's no divorce happening. I feel like I'm in control, and I feel like I can do this on demand as I need it, whether I'm feeling good and I'm feeling high, or I feel like shit and I just want to be left alone. I can come back to this and I can tap into this anytime I want. That's my end.
Were there times when you were in a state of anxiety coming over you, and then you went to do it? Like you were, okay, you recognized it. Here's that anxious feeling. I'm going to go and do it. Or was it always at a set time?
I still do. I still do it that, like, to me, it's a set time thing and on demand. So,
Right.
and it's still a part of my daily practice today. So, and then any time in between, if I feel like, today's just not my day, things aren't going the way that I want them to. I've taken the walk around the block. I've, gotten some fresh air, and it's just not working. I did it today. I sat outside for 10 minutes and I left the electronics inside and I said, leave me alone for 10 minutes.
Go back to the beginning of the divorce, right? Your first few months after that divorce. Go back to the times where you didn't see a point in, I'm going back to that real pain, because this is the pain people are feeling. Anyone who is going through a divorce right now, they're in that. And we have to cast our minds back to that, which I can remember being on the floor of my kitchen, my face touching the floor, tears, snot, everything just on the ground, sobbing. That was me because I had a thought that triggered a pain so great in me, which was a thought that I'm not a good mother, I'm a failure, I can't do this, I'll be alone forever, and that triggered the intense grief in me that literally knocked me to my knees. So there I am on the kitchen floor. That's a very confronting situation to be in when you're on the floor on your knees, like, where the terminology comes from. I'm on my knees, and so that's when you think, when you picture someone like that, and there will be people out there right now who are doing that, and I've had other friends who have confessed to me that I know of a person who, this is very intense, but they actually hit themselves over the head with a bottle because they wanted the thoughts in their head to stop because they were in so much pain. So when you're in that kind of agonizing pain, and here we are talking about meditation, journaling, yoga to get through that emotional chaos. It's when we say emotional chaos, we're not lying, we're not mucking around. When you say meditation nearly saved your life, we're not mucking around, right? So people have to understand that divorce grief can take people to places they feel they may never come out of. And with meditation, mindfulness, and journaling, you and I got through that intense emotional chaos. So for me, it was like when I felt like that, I had to grab my journal and I had to write. It was like I was driven, and I don't even know what I was writing. I just got it down. And I feel like when you were talking about how you said, okay, brain, this is your time, go for it. That was me saying the same thing. Okay, put it all down. I don't care. I'm not judging it. Just get it down, whatever it takes. And we're going to look at it without judgment, and we're going to slowly, and so it takes a while. It's like riding a bike. Do you feel that you got better at it? The first few times you feel a little clunky. I did do meditation. And the first few times I kind of couldn't get to, I just was like, okay, that was a nice little rest, But then eventually I started to be able to step back and observe myself versus my higher self and the person that was stuck in this chaos. So can you relate to those, to that like intense pain, that grief, and how it saved you?
Yeah, I have, there's a lot to unpack there. That is, there's a lot. And so the vulnerability aspect, I'll join you in being vulnerable, right? So you were on your knees in the kitchen. I think it was the same weekend that I went soul searching in nature. It might have been the morning of, or it might have been the day before. I literally remember it was a previous house, and I was sitting at the bottom of the steps, and I had just finished an argument with my wife, and the kids are at the bottom of the steps, and the kids heard every single word of that. And I just couldn't believe this was my reality. That number one, I'm at this point with my now wife, who I've loved for the last 15, 20 years. And this is unraveling. And at the same time, now the kids are part of this. And I just felt this moment of like, what the fuck is happening right now? And the only thing I knew to do right there in that instance was go downstairs, sit on the steps with the kids, and cry with them. And I don't know how long we cried, but it felt like hours. It was probably 5 minutes, but it felt like hours. And it was at that point where I felt like I am beginning to be a failure as a father. This isn't good enough for me. This is not what I want. And I got to dig deeper, and I got to change something. So that spurred that trip to nature. And I was fortunate, like you mentioned, I was fortunate that I had found meditation and yoga prior to that day. And I really found meditation just by happenstance at the end of yoga. It's normal for somebody to do an hour-long yoga session, and at the end, you have a shavasana. It's a 10-minute meditation. And so I found it that way. When you're in a traumatic event, it is very easy to forget the things that you know that you need to do, whether it's divorce or whether it's like everyday shit now. In Christianity, they call it the devil, right? It has a way of saying, no, you shouldn't journal today. No, you don't need to go on that walk. You don't need to meditate. You don't need to read the book. You don't need to go to the gym. You don't need to do all these things that you know you need to do to be right. Do the things that you know you need to do to get right. And so it took me a little while to get to that point in that scenario, but it did save my life. I did disconnect. I did find nature. I did find meditation. I did get into an exercise routine. I did recognize that this is not the life for me. And I would say that to the person that's going through that same situation today. Like, recognize that this is not where you want to be. Identify where that is and fucking make it happen today. Like, go start a 5-minute meditation right now. Like, pause this, come back to our show later. But you can pause us. Go do a 5-minute meditation. I'll put link, like you and our DMs are open all day. Twitter, Instagram, find us. Whatever it is, we're here to help. But find the thing that gives you joy. Find the things that heals your heart, even if it's temporary. That's something that you can go back to as often as you need to begin healing, to begin growing, and to begin moving past whatever it is that you're going through.
I think I totally agree. And I think you're right. It can be, we talked about this before, but it can just be that 5 minutes. And the important part, I think, for anyone who feels what you were feeling there and what I was feeling on the floor and what the guy with the bottle, it's that going next time, it's being mindful. What got me to that place? Something got me there. I was triggered by a thought. So what was that thought? How do I reframe? How do I start changing these thoughts around so that I'm not taken down? So I've talked about my thoughts. I realized, well, if you're telling yourself you're a bad mother, you're a fat, well, then of course, how are you ever going to come out of this? Meditating, journaling gave me that ability to see really clearly how I was talking to myself, what I was saying, the perspective I was applying to my divorce, failure, my kids, like what's going to happen to them in the long future that I have no idea about right now, but I'm jumping the gun, getting way ahead of myself, and it's ballooning out, and it's bringing me right down here. So meditation is that time to just sit and observe and be aware of the thoughts, aware of what takes you there, so that you can recognize them. The next time it happens, I literally started to hear, you're a bad mother. I would go, oh, there's that thought. There's that thought, I'm a bad mother. Then I would challenge that thought instead of just taking it as gospel. I was walking around going, oh, yeah, I'm a bad mother, because that's what I'm telling myself. Oh, yeah, I'm a failure. And meditation allowed me to start going, there's that thought. I don't have to believe that. I can change that thought. And that was the catalyst to changing my thought patterns. And that's when I started to move through the pain, move through the emotional chaos, and start to feel stronger, better, resilient. The things we need, we're desperate to feel when we are just in that. And the acute stage, like, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that story. To me, yes, that is the acute stage, when you're sitting next to your kids sobbing, and I can't even help you guys. That's how fucked I am right now. I can
That's
only
a sad place to be. Like,
yeah, we're in this together, guys, and I never wanted to put you in here, and here we are. So that's really vulnerable, and there are people out there in Me Too that will hear that will go, oh yeah, I hear you. And we're saying to you, if you haven't tried it yet, or if you're looking for ways, this is not the only way, but it is, for us, was the catalyst of starting to find all the other ways to make ourselves feel better and survive divorce and recover.
I would add that as you're talking, it spurred another thought. Like, you have to have your family and friends and whoever it is that's in your corner that can support you. For me, my family and friends are nice, and they don't want to hurt my feelings, and they love me, and maybe they certainly have my best interest at heart. But at times, it is beneficial for you to have somebody that's going to keep it 100% real with you. That's going to tell you, this is going to hurt, this is going to suck, this is not going to go away tomorrow, this is going to take time to heal, this may take years, it's going to take a while, and be patient. One thing that helped me is to have somebody that I knew was so she is my therapist still. She was my therapist then, she is still now. Above anybody else in the world, I trust what she's going to tell me is 100% the truth. It's not what I want to hear, it's what I need to hear. It's the things that I need to do that are going to help me, because she knows what the hell she's talking about. And whether that's a professional, I was fortunate enough that I could afford a professional therapist, whether it's a coach, whether it's a friend that is going to keep it real with you. Like, you got to have a support group. You got to have somebody in your corner that either has been there and can tell you what to do, or just gives a shit enough about you that they're willing to hurt your feelings. And you may not like it at first. It may sting a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's what you got to hear to move forward. And if you don't have that person, I'm here to listen. I know you're here to listen. Like, there's a lot of resources out there. Find that person if you don't have them. Reach out to somebody. Like, that's we talked last week about asking for help.
Yeah.
You got to reach out. You don't need to go through this alone. You may feel like at times you want to, and you want people to leave you alone, but there's courage in asking for help and accepting that guidance from somebody.
Yep. And that absolute delicate balance of reaching out, asking for help, and understanding you're also the only one who can get yourself through it. We're not asking much of people, are we, Bo?
Well, yeah. So you have to right. There's a fine balance right there.
There's
so
a balance.
You have to ask for help, but at the same time, whatever they tell you to do, you got to do the work. You and I can sit here and tell everybody to go meditate, to go journal. But if they don't go meditate and go journal, then they're going to be sitting back here next week listening to the same types of messages from us and being in the same spot. Grow, move forward, move past this. Don't let this thing that happened to you in the past define who you are today and who you're going to be tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've got it in you. You've got the strength in you. You just got to find it. That's it. And the balance. Yeah.